Welcome back, everybody, to the season of encounters. That's right. This is the Squatchers Lounge podcast, and tonight we're going to Siskiyou County, California, one of the squatchiest places, along with a sort of new Quasy from our buddy Dean. We're going to wrap it all up with a Bigfoot campfire story and find out why little Susie is just so sad. All that more right here tonight on the Squatchers Lounge podcast. We'll give you your whole seat, but you're only going to need the edge. That's right, everybody, and I am the host of this mess, and I did introduce myself, so I'm the Reverend Jeff Kelly. I'm here, you're there. That makes this whole thing very, very cool. That's right, we're talking about Bigfoot in Siskiyou County, California. That's right near the Oregon border edge where all the goodness happens. Lots and lots of Bigfoot stories come from there. So we're going to pare down the news a little bit tonight so that we can get to more stories than we probably ever have on the show before. But before that, as always, we talk about the news. That's right. This week's show is brought to you by Crocheting with Cassie. That's right. If you need crocheted dolls, get a hold of Cassie. She can figure it out for you. Okay. Fossils cast doubt on human lineage originating in Africa. That's right. As the Dean Cooper always likes to say, we're not even sure we came out of Africa. And he's probably a pretty smart guy. I've talked to him a lot, and I kind of think he does. And he is anyhow. Fossils from Greece and Bulgaria of ape-like creatures that lived 7.2 million years ago may fundamentally alter the understanding of human origins, casting doubt on the view that the evolutionary lineage that led to people arose in Africa. Monday, the creature known as Graciopithecus ferrebrura. Yeah, thanks for the Latin lesson there, Dean. And known only from a lower jawbone and an isolated tooth, may be the oldest known member of the human lineage that began after an evolutionary split from the line that led to chimpanzees, our closest cousins. That's right, at least what they think of. I say Sasquatch is closer. The jawbone, which included teeth, was unearthed in 1944 in Athens. The premolar was found in south-central Bulgaria in 2009. The researchers examined them using sophisticated, he's being examined by top men, I tell you. Sophisticated new techniques included CT scans and established their age by dating the sedimentary rock in which they were found. So, yeah, they're picking and hunting, and nobody can ever agree on anything, just like the Bigfoot community. Welcome to science. All right, let's move up to 3.3 million years ago. That's right, 3.3 million year old fossil reveals the origins of the human spine. That's right, the human spine is everything besides the hips. That's what also allows us to walk upright. Analysis of a 3.3 million year old fossil skeleton reveals the most complete spinal column of any early human relative, including vertebrae, neck, and ribcage. The findings published this week in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences indicate the portions of the human spinal structure that enable efficient walking motions were established millions of years ago, earlier than previously thought. The fossil was known as Selam. It's nearly complete skeleton of a 2.5-year-old child discovered in Dakika, Ethiopia in 2000 by some dude, I can't say his name. Professor of organismal biology, I had to be careful on that one, and anatomy at the University of Chicago, and a senior author of the new study, Selam, which means peace in the Ethiopian Amharic language. It was an early human relative of the species Australopithecus africensis. If I'm not mistaken, that's a relative of Lucy's, the same species. Hey, look at that, as the famous Lucy skeleton. So, yeah, I don't read these ahead of time, people. I don't have to. I'm sharing them with you as I find them. All right, so we're now upright and walking, humans. Forget coyote sightings. That's right. Have you seen Bigfoot? Call Bigfoot 911, and this North Carolina team will take you seriously. Okay, folks, I want to stop right here at the very beginning, because the only reason that I actually brought this article up was because it's not saying dial 911, morons. Okay, don't dial 911. Don't do that. Okay, they're not going to care that Bigfoot's out there. Oh, I'm in the middle of a mountain. I'm on Forest Road 9 and somewhere in god-awful by Omaha, and there's a Bigfoot here. They're not going to care. So don't call 911. They're talking about call Bigfoot 911. The McDowell News is reporting that Bigfoot 911 is a small but dedicated group of investigators who have quietly spent the past few years poking around the woods, McDowell County, in search of the legendary Bigfoot, or as some call him, Sasquatch. Bigfoot 911, which formed in 2014, claims to have extensive evidence of Bigfoot exists, says the news, but they call it the Beast of Blue Ridge. That's right. What we do is Bigfoot expeditions in McDowell County. I'm hoping they're not charging for them, because I don't want to support any of those people. Anyhow, there you have it, folks. Don't call 911. Call Bigfoot 911. Put them to work. Speaking of putting things to work, South Carolina bans private possession of dangerous wild animals as pets. Finally, Governor Henry McMaster has signed a measure into law that prohibits the keeping of big cats, bears, great apes as pets. Hallelujah. Stop caging your cousins. Sponsored by Representative Heather Crawford. That's right. Passed the House and Senate by votes of 99-5. Who are those 5 assholes? Seriously, do you have a big cat at home, jackass? Is that what the problem was? And 38-0 in the House, where it should have been. Prior passage of the bill, South Carolina was one of only 5 states with virtually no laws regarding private possession of dangerous wild animals, which has resulted in situations such as the woman who had her face ripped off by the loving black bear that she'd had as a pet for 8 years. Yeah, crazy, not interested. That's how people get their faces ripped off and eaten by chimpanzees. Thank you, South Carolina, for coming into the 21st century. Now, moving on to Wisconsin and Bigfoot's hotspots. Apparently, Mark Crawford thinks that Wisconsin is a place, don't you know, Wisconsin's full of Bigfoots, don't you know? Isn't that where the 70s show came from? Can you imagine those guys going Bigfoot? And I do think that there's a Squatch in these woods. This is the signature line to a Bigfoot show on Animal Planet. The immense popularity of this program reflects a nationwide fascination with the possibility that elusive Sasquatches or Bigfoot exist in the woods of America. I don't know why I whisper that every time I say Sasquatch, but I do. Recent episodes have featured northern Minnesota and the areas of Michigan, and these creatures really do exist. There's no reason why Wisconsin shouldn't have some too. Yeah, that's right. So I guess they have Bigfoot envy. Marionette County Bigfoot hotspots. According to the BFRO, 5 Bigfoot sightings have been reported in Marionette County. The most recent was in April of 2013, when a retired police officer witnessed a Bigfoot crossing a highway near Pembine. Other sightings have been reported north in a large expanse of the wetlands and hardwood forest. Good camping spots in the areas are close to McClintock County Park and Goodman County Park. Sounds like those parks are in a hole and they need some revenue. I don't know. Anyhow, Big South Falls, Strong Falls, and along the highway falls flowage. Definitely squatchy terrain. So if you're out there in Wisconsin, don't you know, check out those places and go squatching and let us know how you come out. Okay, if Bigfoot were real, we'd have a problem. Apparently, Tetrapod Zoology, published here by Darren Nanish, is a naysayer. We have the Bigfoot vocalizations, we have Bigfoot tracks, we have the Bigfoot DNA, right? It's a skeptic's look at, why don't we have a Bigfoot on the table? It talks about Pindernagel and the Meldrum. Whatever, dude. Go out in the woods with us, okay? Come up to camp with us from August 24th to the 27th, and I'll give you the opportunity to be in Bigfoot territory. I can't tell you Bigfoot's going to show up, but if he does, it's going to be a pleasure to watch you piss yourself. Okay, moving right along. Somebody was asking about the last Bigfoot campfire stories. Paiute Braves encounter Bigfoot in the Sierras. Is it a true story? It's based on true events. That's about what I can tell you on that one, but they all have some basis in truth in them, as they always have. It's an amazing story. It's gotten more than 9,000 views since last week, and there'll be another brand new Bigfoot Campfire story coming out this Friday, so you won't want to miss it. However, if you wanted to know some more about the Paiute Native American legends of history of Bigfoot, you can check out the Yosemite Mono Lake Paiute.wordpress.com website, and there's all kind of cool stories about the Paiute Indians here in California, interactions with Bigfoot. They got, I mean, they're literally descriptions of them with red hair and brown hair and black hair. The redheaded ones seem to be said to be the meanest. They're not like the grizzly bears, and the Paiute shared space with them in the high Sierras, but big, hairy, human-like creatures that the Paiute people were afraid of. The Bigfoots and the Indians always tried to keep away from each other, but sometimes during hard times, the Bigfoots would eat young Indian children who wandered away from the group. Once they had tasted the human flesh of the Paiutes, believed that they would hunt humans. And that's why the one that ate on Little Wing had to be put down. So there's a bunch of cool information out there about it. Oh, they wouldn't have done that. Yeah, actually, they would have. So there's where some of your information comes from. Okay, you'll want to check out the fan page as well. Facebook.com/S Lounge Podcast, because that's where all of the show links are. That's where all the Bigfoot Campfire stories are posted. There's a pleasant picture of Santa Claus and Men in Black. You know, how can you go wrong by liking the S Lounge Podcast page? I don't think you can. And with that wraps up this week's news already. Look at that. Doesn't take long to get through stuff when there isn't a whole lot of news in the news. All right, guys, we are absolutely in luck today because we have both a new Quasy theory from Dean Cooper and a camping tips for stupids. So let's not jerk around anymore. With no further gilding the lily, as they say, let's take a listen to our newest Quasy theory from Dean Cooper. And now, Quasy Theories from a Quasi Scientist with your host, Dean Cooper.
The woo hypothesis. There has been a lot of discussion off and on, more on than off lately, about Sasquatch portals, Sasquatch cloaking, and Sasquatch associated with other paranormal phenomena. Many of us in the Bigfoot community are using the term woo when discussing this sort of thing. Now, I am, by my nature, not argumentative. I always assume, as a working hypothesis, that people who have observed and reported Sasquatch engaging in paranormal activities, or woo, are not lying about their observations, until proven otherwise. Allow me to interject here that I think that there are almost certainly several species of unidentified upright walking apes related to all us other apes running about the planet. I will now present my hypothesis concerning areas where Sasquatch have been exhibiting woo. The hypothesis is, these places have a bad case of the fairies. Yes, fairies, beings like the sylphs, naiads, and dryads of Greek mythology, lower order devas of Hinduism, or the jinn of Arabia. Sometimes these days they are called nature spirits. The Celts call them the good folk, the gentry, the she, as in banshee and pictshee, or more specifically in this case, pukas, the shape-shifting fairy of Irish legend. Pukas lead people astray, as is illustrated in the stage play Harvey. Elwood P. Dowd, the lead character in Harvey, is led astray from a successful career in the world of banking after he encounters Harvey, a 6'3.5" tall, upright walking rabbit. Harvey talks Elwood into leaving banking and, instead, spending his day socializing with the lower classes in a local bar. Certain recent revelations, coming from the woo side of Bigfootery, suggest that American pukas are practicing their guile on this continent right now. Every older culture all over the world has stories about non-physical entities that can delude humans and sometimes manifest a seeable form, make audible noises, produce smellable odors, induce emotions in the observer, and generally make things go bump in the night. John Keel proposed that such entities are hostile to humans and come from some other dimension with naughty intentions. I think they are perfectly natural entities that occasionally like to flabbergast us. The form they assume is taken from our minds and the current surrounding culture, as are their actions, which is why much of what they do is inexplicable. I personally have occasionally run into some of these buggers, a subject which I have elaborated upon in other quasi theories. Now, where do these creatures come from? I think they come from wherever subatomic particles pop out from and disappear back to, or photons that are quantum entangled talk to each other. They come from a higher order Riemannian phase space, of which our world is a multiply connected subset. In other words, the astral plane. That said, any of these beings that have time to waste dorking about with us humans are of a low order and not very bright. Some of them are quite territorial and radiate anger and hostility. I chased one around in a basement of an old house once. They back off when confronted. They don't do portals as such, but they can sure make you see one, along with demons, guardian Ewoks, appear as mind-speaking forest people, or what have you. So in conclusion, if the Bigfoot you are seeing comes from a portal, that ain't a Bigfoot, it's a bloody fairy. You may read the text of this on my blog at binding.com. It's BHAIDIN.com.
It's a bloody fairy. That's right. You heard the man. Thank you so much there, Mr. Dean Cooper. That's one of the things that we've always talked about in the inner circle and the outer circle and on this program itself for several years now is we're not saying that the woo doesn't exist. We're not saying that there isn't woo out there. We're just saying that whatever them people are chasing in the woo just isn't Bigfoot. It's something else, and it's okay. Just call it something else, unless we all just get confused. That's all. Call it portal beings. Call it beings of light. I mean, whatever. And we don't even want to talk about friggin' Matthew Johnson's mental breakdown in public that's going on. Woo! Hey, y'all, you buy my book for half price of 100 copies of them, I'll give you one for free. I mean, dude's like really having, I don't know what to do about it. Anyhow, we've talked about it, and we're going to move on for right now to our camping tips for stupids for this week from our buddy Jevin Moore. Here it is. Coming at you.
Camping tips for stupids. Tip number 40. The great God once said, give a man a fish and hope he doesn't have seafood allergies. But teach a man to fish, you got free food for life. Fly fishing is a time-honored American tradition in America, with the teachings being taught down through the generations for millions and billions and zillions of years. Dog years, that is. So allow me to carry on that ancient tradition of America and teach you how to fly fish. Step 1, find a river. Step 2, get in that river. Step 3, find the right size hook you prefer. Step 4, find a good sized piece of dog shit, not too hard, but not too soft either. Step 5, hook that dog shit and cast it out there. Bam, fly fishing. Just make sure it's of legal size, or Smokey will put you in the pokey. This has been Camping Tips for Stupids.
Oh, God.
Remember to spay and neuter your idiot population.
Well, there you have it, folks. Spay and neuter your idiot populations. Holy crap. Thank you, sir. I was wondering where the hell you were going with the dog shit, and now we know. Wow. Hey, you know, this is the part where we go out here to the chat room and see who's hanging out live with us tonight. So let's take a look and see who's out there who we can say hi to. Well, of course, on there at the bottom, he doesn't smell like Irish Spring, and he never bought me anything, but still I thump my chest and sing of my drunken Irish dad. How you doing there, Ryan McGinty? Glad you're out there, sir. There's Drummer Forever 69, Gary and Whitney. They're tearing up the highways in New Mexico looking for the chupacabra. That's like not actually true. They're driving berries back east, trying not to make jam, but glad you guys are out there. David Roman, how you doing there? JJI, great. Glad you're there, man. Sam Squanch Rivera, he's a faithful guy. I'm glad you're hanging out with us tonight. Mr. Rod Dupree is in the place to be. That's right. Dean Cooper, our quasi-theorist, is hanging out with us, man. So glad you could be there. Let's see here. The anime guy. Hey, that's pretty decent if it wasn't so small to read. Glad you're out there with us as well. Hey, my name's Forrest Groves. People call me Forrest Groves. I'm actually watching Forrest Gump on TV while the show's on. Well, not watching it, but it's back there. It's kind of funny. Kurt Harris, how you doing there, pal? I got to talk to you after the show tonight, man. Had a really good time today. Let's see who else is flying around out there in Never chat land. I know there's more people out there because Cassie's out there, and of course her son Christopher hanging out with the Squatch Box in the room tonight. Your Hobo Man 5 is back with us again. So glad to be here, sir. Bobby Reich, man, hope you're feeling good, dude. So glad you're hanging out with us in the chat room tonight, man. I was wondering when you were going to find your way in here. Bobby Reich's a cool dude, man. I hope you're feeling well these days. All right, let's see. Where else are we? I don't know. There's more people than that in here. If you haven't said hi to me yet in the chat room, I won't know you're here, so I can't really give you a shout out, but I'll try. Of course, Mr. Cole Wilmus, he's hanging out with me on What You're Watching on Monday nights, and he's actually a really good addition to the show. If you guys haven't checked it out, you probably should. I know there's more people there. Wow. Randall the Vandal. Hey, man. Glad you're in the house checking it out tonight. Troll or not, I like the name. Clarissa Miller. You know, I've been noticing that the female viewership of the show has actually gone sky high recently. Glad you're in the room with us as well. John Capriati. Hey, dude. New Haven, Connecticut. Glad you are with us hanging out tonight as well. Billy Simpson. How you doing there, man? That's right. We are looking in caves for Bigfoot. As a matter of fact, in the Sierra event on the 24th, we'll be going to some caves if you're brave enough to go down there and not fall off 10,000 feet to your death, or 6,000 feet to your death, actually. Let's see who else is floating around out there. It's all about death in the Sierras. It really is. I mean, every blind corner you fall, it's 5,000 feet to your valley floor. So good luck with that. Let's scroll down here to the bottom and see if anybody else has joined us since we went through the bottom. If I missed your name, I'm so sorry. There's lots of you guys hanging out in here these days, and I am appreciative of every single one of them. There's Ty Bivens, Starshine. She's in the house as well. Wow. Everybody's finally checking in. So that's going to do it for shout outs this week. And I want to thank every one of you guys for being here. Now it's time to get into some Bigfoot stories. That's what we're all here for. We're not here to actually listen to me flap my gums in thankfulness and all that good stuff. We're here to talk about some Bigfoot stuff. And this is our county of the night. Siskiyou County, California, rides right along the Oregon border here. You can see that there are several large national forests, Pacific Coast Ranges, Lavate Las Manos, Lavabeos National Monument, the Klamath National Forest, the Lower Klamath National Wildlife. I've been here. This stuff is squatchy, man. This is the rainforest. It really is. It's just above the Shasta Trinity National Forest, which is another really squatchy part. And it's actually, if you scroll out here for just a minute, we'll see if we can get away with it. Not really all that far from where we'll be hunting. Come August for the trip, we're actually over here in the Plumas National Forest is where we'll be hunting. So as you can see, it's just there. And if we click over to the satellite, this part of California is basically rainforest. A lot of coastal rains, the redwoods are still growing there. I've actually been up here Bigfooting myself, and as we scroll in here, you can see that it really is, especially this left side around this outer bowl. Hey, look, it's the Sylvanic Valley. I wonder if anybody lives in there. Bigfoot's in there, or is that a new Area 51? I don't know. We don't want to zoom in too far. Big old snow cap over here. So we're in Bigfoot territory, absolutely, no doubt. Let's go ahead and kick it back over to the map scene so you guys can see the towns that we'll be talking about. Into it. Now, a lot of these go way back. This one here is actually recalled from 1944 near the town of Wairika to the Klamath River. They're down leave the Klamath at Horse Creek, he says. 1944, she was 9 years old, and her brother was 8. They lived in Northern California, just off the Klamath River on McKinney Creek. They were walking on a dirt road, passing a clearing. Across the clearing, about 50 yards, we saw strange animals. It was like looking at a papa bear or a mama bear and a baby bear from where we were. They seemed to have long necks. Their arms hung down almost to the ground, and we stood and looked at them. They looked back at us. My brother and I kept asking each other, what are those? They turned and walked back into the woods. We ran home to tell our mother, and she insisted that we saw sheep. Well, we know they weren't sheep. Years later, of course, when Bigfoot was reported, that's when they figured out what they had seen, all the way back in 1944. Moving up in age here just a little bit to 1966. We are still pre-Patty. They are the fall of 1966 near the town of Weed off of Old Oregon Trail. Their family kept a bee yard near Mount Shasta on the Old Oregon Trail. One evening after tending the bees, his father looked up towards the road home and saw a man standing near a stump of a tree. Then he heard some kind of yip, yip, yippy sound, and somewhere between a coyote and a cowboy roundup yell, but very loud. Our old dog Queenie jumped into the car like she was scared. The man-like creature took off, loping away in a slow run with its arms hanging down. When my dad drove closer to the stump later on, he realized that by the height of the stump and the height of the man or the man-like creature, that it would have had to have been much larger and taller than any normal man. We believe it was a Bigfoot. Of course you do. I would too. All right, let's move ahead. Jumping here to 1967, same year as the Bluff Creek encounter, which happened actually in Klamath County, which is directly adjacent to it. This actually happens in Happy Camp, and if you look at the map here, you can actually find Happy Camp on it right about yonder. Happy Camp, there's a name of a Bigfoot movie as well. That's not a great Bigfoot movie, but it is actually out there. So let's take a listen to what happened in Happy Camp in 1967 in March. 96. My husband was a teacher and had left for school. Our daughter had just gotten onto the grade school bus, so it was after 8 a.m. There had been no water, so I took the two little boys, 3.5 and 20 months, and walked up the hill to clean the screen to the intake on the holding tanks. This was taxing, as I was 8 months pregnant again at the time. We had just gotten to the top, and I was going to sit on a big tree stump. The cat had jumped on it and immediately arched her back hair on the end and screeched. I looked to see what she was looking at, and there was a huge man-like thing. Its hair was long like a horse's mane and flowed. It was all black that I could see. It first dropped down and then got right up and ran uphill, zigzagging around branches as it went. I grabbed the two boys and ran down the hill so fast I could have gone a mile. My heart was really pumping. Wow, that's kind of creepy. We had trouble with some bears for years, but definitely not a bear. This thing moved around on 2 feet, not on all 4. Twernt no bear. So we're Happy Camp in 1967, and we have already got March. October is when Patty was seen, and again, the big floods came through all this area in 64. It wasn't just the Klamath River that got flooded out. I mean, well, the Klamath River did flood, as well as the Trinity and several others. All right, moving ahead in time here, we're going to take a time jump. Boom, 1977. In Siskiyou County near Sawyer's Bar, a small road between Etna and Sums Bar. Good Lord in heaven help us. We might not get all the way through this one. We're going to try. It was the summer of 77, and I lived in Arcata, California, working as a volunteer botanist for Six Rivers National Forest. I was helping out a graduate student at Humboldt State University with his master's project. We studied wildlife and plants associated with freshwater ponds in the forest near Willow Creek. One weekend, my girlfriend and I drove up to the Salmon River to go camping. It was a remote area, and it seemed that most people up that way, either miners along the river or fire crews. Near forks of the Salmon, which is a town, we stopped and camped and pulled out near the mouth of a little fork salmon lake. No, whatever. God, it's so confusing. The next day, we hiked upstream, went swimming, even saw a black bear on the trail, and later drove home. The following morning, Monday, my coworkers came to pick me up for the week's work, but I realized while packing that I was missing the telephoto lens to my camera. I remember using it in the Little North Fork photographing a frog. Figuring I had laid it by the stream and forgotten it, I did not join my two coworkers. Instead, I called my girlfriend and told her what had happened and asked if she would like to return to the Little North Fork. Instead of roaring up there and back about 100 miles, we decided to make a backpack trip out of it. We got up there, hiked the trail, found the lens, but decided to drive further up the paved road to a spot somewhere near Sawyer's Bar, where a dirt road followed the North Fork and led to a trailhead where hikers could further follow up the North Fork to the Marble Mountain Wilderness area. And that is where I'm going to leave you with this one, because unfortunately for this educated man, he can't read. Yeah, he can't write any better than this is reading. So I'm very, very sorry, but that's too painful to continue with. 1993, moving up here, California, Siskiyou, happy camp again, close to Elk Creek Road. I was traveling down a country road from a friend's camp, and I was riding a small Honda motorbike. I got past a turn and heard something akin to a flat tire popping. My bike is small enough that if it had a flat tire, I'd know. I was doing about 15 miles an hour and looked back. After going around a right-hand curve and crossing a creek, I saw what looked to be a hairy, human-like figure about 6 to 6.5 feet tall running behind my bike. Scared the crap out of me, so I hit the throttle and did what I could do to get out of there. When I told others about this, they would comment, "Oh, it's probably a bear playing with you." Yeah, right. I don't think so, because a bear cannot run upright at 15 plus miles an hour, maybe on all fours, but what I saw was upright. That's pretty sick, man. Trail bike guy getting chased by Sam Squinch on the trails near Happy Camp in 1993. I'll get a little sip of the old lip wetter. All right. 1998, August, summertime, near Etna, Summit Highway 3. We're going to give this one a shot. On day one, I hiked over 14 miles of the Pacific Coast Trail. Backpacker sighted Bigfoot off the Pacific Coast Trail in the Marble Mountain Wilderness. So there I was in my purple marmot bag, all cozy and tucked in. The night was clear and about 4 days before the full moon in late August, so it was bright. I was sleeping parallel to the little brook running along the marble ledge and was about 15 feet from its bank. I fell asleep and I woke up to a weird noise that was far away. I was already frightened of animals because I was by myself. It doesn't matter, but I'm also a female. I was scared out there by myself, but having the time of my life. The noise was so far away to be down in the forest in the Woolly Creek drainage. It was loud, however, almost like yelling or a whooping. It was consistent and occurred one yell after the other. I didn't worry too much as I wasn't concerned as it was so far away. The yelling truly happened one after the other, and it was getting louder and perhaps closer. I still was not concerned as it was far enough away and I was atop of a huge cliff, so I felt safe and unreachable. However, the yelling got louder and closer yet and started to travel up the boulder field below. At this point, I had heard the yelling for 20 minutes, and again, it was a consistent howl or whoop, and over again. I just laid still in my bag and realized not only was this yelling thing was coming up the boulder field, but coming up the cliff. Sure enough, the creature was climbing up the cliff and fast. The whole event was this thing running and hooting inward drone, yelling up the drainage, up and up the cliff and beyond the top of the peak. Sure enough, when it got to the cliff, it pulled and climbed itself up swiftly and agile, as I put in my journal. It literally dynoed every move on this 5.9 cliff and yanked itself up the cliff to the top of where the ledges were, where I was. The creature, in the meantime, was still consistently calling, yelping, and hooting. It got to the ledge and started running towards the peak above. As it got closer, I pretty much urinated in my sleeping bag, but I just laid still. I was extremely frightened. As I started to approach the ledge close to where I was on the other side of the brook, I could see it. It was a silhouette of a huge running gorilla. It ran on two legs, but dragged and pulled with its arms. It was huge. The arms were almost the length of half its body and was covered in hair. It was black, but I really only saw the silhouette. The head reminded me of the abominable snowman from the Christmas Rudolph story. Bumble! It just ran and howled, but then stopped slightly when I was parallel to me. It stopped howling and slowed down slightly and kind of hesitated. It turned its head towards me as if smelling something, but then immediately turned forward and really started running even faster and louder and faster, then climbed up to the top of the peak and called for nearly 4 hours straight until almost sunrise. I stayed awake the whole time. I got up the next day and entered a short entry into my journal and packed up and continued on my journey. Wow. I don't know that I'd be continuing on anything. And if you remember back, there's actually another Bigfoot campfire story that is related to this one. A hiker gets clearest picture of Bigfoot yet on the Pacific Coast Trail. You can check that one out on the channel as well. It's actually an interesting story. It's more of a mind screw than anything else. 1998, summertime, August, Hornbrook, Highway 96. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, weather was sunny and mild. My husband and 2 kids were fishing on the Klamath River in Siskiyou County. It was very quiet. No birds were singing. Even the range cattle were nowhere around. We had been fishing in at least a couple of miles. We smelt the sour, wet dog smell. We looked around and saw him across the river by a bush, just standing there. He was very huge. He wasn't black, but more like dark brown. Hair seemed to be thick. The smell was pungent. That's something I can't forget. His or her hair covered the body, and it stood there for a couple of minutes, then crouched down, got a drink. We didn't feel threatened by it. Up on the dirt road, a loud Jeep went by. I turned to look at the Jeep, turned back, and it was gone. It was one of those encounters that you just, was it really there? You think you saw it. Better been more people there. Fortunately for this one, it was an entire family that saw it on the banks of the river. You don't want to seem crazy out there. You know, you just want a little bit of validation. And when it happens, you hope other people are with you. All right. We're going to be cruising right along here. We got 2 more to go through tonight. Let's see here. First one up is in 2005. Again, near Happy Camp off of Highway 96. I was traveling from San Francisco to visit my daughter, and since the coast was so foggy and Highway 1, I went east from Eureka to Willow Creek, California, since I didn't want to travel south again to Redding. We decided on Highway 96 through Eureka and I-5 as a shortcut. My youngest daughter was with me, and we had driven a long ways, so we gassed up in Willow Creek and decided to continue the drive. It was late, and it was boring, eventful, dark drive up this Bigfoot Highway 96, but finally we crossed the bridge on the Klamath River and got to a campground where we finally saw trailers and trucks and people type stuff. The road then goes up a switchback to a ridge for a mile or so, and I slowed my speed to 25. So I got to the ridge, and maybe a couple of miles from the bridge, I came around this last switchback, and to the right, my headlights swept the embankment, and I thought there was a bear coming down the embankment towards the highway. So I slowly crept ahead and began to stop as this bear was shuffling down the embankment on 2 feet. But it wasn't a bear. I stopped completely, and not over 100 feet in front of me was this thing intent on getting across the road in front of me. If I didn't see it on the bank, I probably would have hit it because it was that close. It got to the center line in 3 long steps, looked at me, and then jumped off the road. I mean, from the center line on its right leg, it jumped clear off the pavement and over a 2-foot embankment and was out of sight. It was not overly tall, probably just 6 feet tall or a little taller, but extremely thick. Maybe the 300-pound range this thing was built. It was hair, not fur, and matted and dark brown with a rusty auburn to it. I was extremely close with high beams on and stopped in the road. It had long arms like a gorilla or something and sort of lumbered forward like a gorilla, only fast with definite long strides. It had something in it was aiming for, and when it looked at me, it turned its head back straight, and this thing jumped off the road like an elk on one leg. It had extremely thick legs and shoulders, and no man could have made a jump like that. If I had had a video camera on the dashboard of my car, you would have seen the video of your life. I couldn't have made out any genitalia. It was so hairy, and I would estimate that the body hair like 6 inches long and matted and dangly, but not so much on its butt or the back of its legs. I could make out the thighs, and they were some guns. There you go, boy. She's falling in love with the Sam Squanch. He was cut, ripped, rippling thighs. Okay. But that's definitely the kind of details that you want to understand from people. Is it a fursuit or is it hairy legs? That's usually how you can tell real from fake. When I look at the Patterson Gimlin footage, those are hairy legs. When I look at the Butchie Kid videos, those are fur-covered Levi's. All right, let's finish it up here with the official Bigfoot reports here. 2009 spring near Medford, Oregon. Of course, it's just across the border, but it's actually happened here in Siskiyou County near the Upper Applegate Road. The fellows from Medford, Oregon, he traveled to the Applegate region, Del Norte, Humboldt regions quite often. He's still very emotional about what he had seen, and he can describe every moment of it. I didn't know what I was going to become of me because it's weird trying to anticipate what it was going to do. It was 50 yards or closer to me. I watched as it ducked behind some brush by a boulder on the hill. Looking down upon me, it was 6 to 7 foot tall before ducking down behind the bushes. Reddish, dark brown fur. I saw the sunlight shining off of its shoulders, which were as big as a linebacker's with full gear on. Amber brown eyes, a flat face, long matted hair, and big-ass eyes staring straight through me. I was crippled in fear until the adrenaline started to kick back in. I ran and jumped down the hill, which was about 8 feet above the road, ran into my car, told my friend who was with me by the river to get in the car now, we needed to go, and I didn't stop until I got home and out of the woods. I've planned to spend the day there swimming and fishing near the Applegate River, and I have to say, we were only there for less than an hour. If it were a bear, I would have crashed it off into the woods before I would have even known it was there. But this was definitely no bear. Well, there you have it, folks. That's not all of them. That's about half of them. So we can actually revisit Siskiyou County once again in the future because there's lots and lots of Class A stories that come out of there. And tonight, we're going to wrap it all up with a Bigfoot campfire story. I want to thank every single one of you guys for being out there tonight. It's been a fun show. If you're wondering who I'm talking to, I'm absolutely 150% talking to you. So with that, let's take a listen to tonight's Bigfoot campfire story. And may the Squatch be with you. What the hell is that? I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that was a Bigfoot. Let me tell you a story. These stories are based upon true events. Welcome to another Bigfoot Campfire story. This is one of those tales that you really hope true, as it makes Bigfoot seem just a bit too much like us. But Richie and his kids, Betty and Bruce, were on a Christmas vacation near Hilt, California, and the Klamath National Forest when they had a snowy encounter unlike anything I had heard before. This is their story. I picked up the kids, Bruce and Betty, from their mom's house for Christmas vacation. Finally, I got to take them to the mountains for snow and sledding and all kinds of fun. Bruce, being the oldest, had his nose buried in his phone, but Betty, turning 11 in January, was just bouncing off the walls with anticipation. Question after a machine gun. Is there snow yet? Yes. How much is there? I don't know. When will it start snowing? Today. What time today? Later on. Let's at least hope we get there before it gets bad. How cold will it be? Cold. It went on like that for about a night until we finally reached the cabin I had rented. It wasn't anything too fancy, but it was set off by itself. I found it on Craigslist really cheap, and I was surprised to find not only electricity, but 4G internet and a flushing toilet. Okay, there has to be something wrong with this place. Well, the owner said there were instructions on what to avoid in the area in a book on the copy. Sure enough, there it was. Well, Bruce picked it up and started reading it, and he started laughing. He says, Dad, you're not going to believe this, but people in this book swear they're seeing Bigfoot up here and that they get watched while outside. There's no way that's true, right? So I asked to see the book and flipped to the front, only to read this. If you're reading these instructions, then it's already too late. So just follow the rules and no one will get hurt. It read like a ransom note from the Unabomber. Anyhow, the biggest rule is don't let food outside in any way at night. Not in your car, not on the tables, not on the porch. All food should be put away and stored as to not attract them, in parentheses, goes to the house. When you venture outdoors, go in pairs. Never go alone for walks and never encourage them to come close to you. And finally, if they run off, don't follow or chase them. It will not end well for you. If you follow these simple rules, you and they will have a wonderful adventure together. Wow. What did I get me and the kids into? I read on in the back where visitors to the cabin had made their own entries. One read, Mary S., Lincoln, Illinois. The big red one came close today. He seemed to be watching me as I washed dishes in the creek. Later that evening, we could hear him in the same spot I cleaned up in. I hope they fix the water soon. Another read, Billy G. Something must be really wrong. Tim has not come back from his hike. I told him not to go alone, but he didn't listen. Now they're screaming outside. Marion H. from Bedford, Pennsylvania. I saw a group of them today in a meadow. I was out with the wife. I think they were digging for something to eat as the dirt was flying up from all of them. The moment they noticed us, they ran off. And just then, loud from outside, a thud came from our cabin. Well, we dropped everything as Betty was trying to get her sled off the car alone. It slipped and fell off, knocking her down to the ground. Well, she wasn't hurt. No harm, no foul, as they say. So we picked it up and made our way back inside. When it started to snow outside, and that was a good thing, as it was getting to be pretty bare on the hills around the cabin. But the forecast was for a fresh 8 to 12 inches overnight, so there should be tons of play in the morning. We set up our beds for the night, and Bruce had the fire just roaring, so He was sending selfies to his friends from his phone. The snow was really falling outside as we sat by the window watching it drop. Finally, it was off to bed just about 10 p.m. Sometime during the night, it got really cold outside. I got up to use the bathroom, so I stoked up the wood-burning stove and really got it burning. Well, I saw something moving out the front window, so I sat down to watch, but it was way too far out there, and it just seemed like a shadow, so I went back to bed. The morning came fast, and Betty was soon jumping on my cot, yelling, "Daddy, Daddy, it's time to go study, get up, let's go!" As she ran out of the room. All of the sleeping rooms kind of led to a big room that had a kitchen and a living room all kind of together. Well, we fed the wood stove, and we ate a few donuts, and headed out for some sledding and tubing. Right out of the back of the cabin was a hill that led to a great sledding drop-off just 40 yards from the cabin. So we pushed our way through, which was now nearly 16 inches of fresh powder, and it was wet and frozen, which should make it really fast. Well, Bruce went down the hill on his tractor tube first, and it bounced in a few places, but they had a great track for the metal sled tracks to follow. Well, I had waxed those things up, so it should be good and fast, and Betty was a pro. This wasn't her first time at this thing. She hopped on and pushed off and flew right down the hill, cutting a path right to the bottom, then rolling off before hitting some trees. Amazing fun for hours, and up and down the hill the kids went. I even took a turn or two on the tube, and by the end of the morning, the entire hill was like ice, and the kids were just flying to the bottom. It was on my last ride down that I noticed the tracks. Just as I picked up the tube to walk back up the snow hill steps that we had carved into the side of the hill, I noticed a set of footprints that led right up to a tree and then trailed off the other side, like something had stopped in and watched us playing in the snow. Well, I didn't want to scare the kids, but these tracks were huge, nearly a third longer and a quarter wider than my snow boot, and it looked like a man with no shoes on. Was something playing a trick on me? Well, either way, it was time to go, so Betty came down the hill one last time, and Bruce yelled he was going to go back to the cabin, but I remembered what the book said and yelled back for him to stay and wait, and that's exactly what he did. Well, on the way back to the cabin, we heard what sounded like a giggle right in the woods from behind us. We all turned at the exact same time and went, "What was that?" As everything went silent again, we made our way back inside. We were all cold, really worn out from sledding. It seemed like food and a nap was next on the list, so I made up some chowder and stoked up the wood stove, put on some hot chocolate from milk, and that would do the trick. 45 minutes later, we were all snoring away. I awoke to the kids yelling at each other. It was nearly dark outside. Betty swore that Bruce had taken her sled and hid it because it was gone, and the tracks led to the woods and back. Well, Bruce and I went out. We noticed that the tracks didn't lead that way at all. As a matter of fact, they led from the woods and back to the woods. Someone or something has taken Betty's sled, but it was far too dark out now to go into the woods, so we figured we'd track it down in the morning. The next morning, Betty again was up with the sun, and now she demanded that we go look for her sled. As she put it, track down the sorry SOB that stole my ride. So off the three of us went. Up the hill, over to the sledding hill. Sure enough, there was her sled at the bottom of the hill. Well, Bruce put her on her lap, and they rode to the bottom of the hill, and quickly, Betty dragged her sled back to the top, complaining it stinks like a dirty bear. Well, sure enough, there were long, dark hairs stuck in the screws and the runners of the sled. It even looked like there was a little bit of blood on one of the runners. Well, it didn't seem to be too worse for wear, so down the hill the kids went again as I stood watch up at the top, make sure we didn't have any strange visitors. Off and on, after a couple of breaks, the kids were finally ready to go get warmed up. And again, as we walked to the cabin, we heard noises, as if something was following us back through the woods, and we just couldn't see it. It would wait for us to almost get out of sight, and then move up a few trees to keep us in sight once again. And this went on until we reached the cabin. Strange to say the least. This time we put Betty's sled right against the side of the house by the window so she could, let me get this right, eyeball the stealing sucker that took her sled face to face. So she moved her cot out there for the night and set up surveillance on it. So we all ate a nice stew and we settled in to watch the snowfall for the night. And we were expected up to 2 more feet by morning. It must have been midnight when I was awoken by screams of, "Daddy! Monsters!" from poor Betty outside by the window. So I jumped up to my feet and rushed out to catch her as she ran to me, telling me she saw monsters outside. Big, hairy monkey monsters like Bigfoot. We've all seen Finding Bigfoot, and she knew what they could be, but how could she see anything there? I couldn't see 2 feet out the window. No, she said they were right at the window looking in at me. So I put my boots on and grabbed the flashlight while Bruce had gotten dressed, and we ventured out into the snow. Sure enough, tracks led right up to the front window. There were even handprints on the window where they had been looking in. And sure again, once again, Betty's sled was gone. Well, she was furious that her sled was gone. And now we were positive it was Bigfoot that had taken it. And it was making more sense as to why it smelled like Stinky Bear. Could it be that they were riding it up and down the hill at night? Well, we all put our cots together and managed to drift off to sleep again because morning came all too fast. Well, we all got up and ate, and we let the sun really get up in the sky as we dressed. And we went out to see if the sled was in the same place that we had found it the day before. Sure enough, after that hike, we looked down the hill, and the sled is there in the tree line at the bottom. Again, the kids rode the tube down the hill, but this time they waved me down instead of coming back up with it. When I got to the bottom, I find the kids staring at the sled broken into pieces. You could plainly see where something very heavy had carved a path from the top of the hill and leading directly into an impact that the tree that left the sled destroyed. Tufts of hair stuck in the boards on the runners bent from the impact, and a blood trail and ugly trackway leading off into the woods. Well, we tracked the blood in as far as we dare, but Betty, being the smartest of us all, she wanted to go back to the cabin and forget the blood and the sled and kind of just go home. It sort of felt like the trip was over. We gathered up all of our things and we began to load the car. The day's sun had melted much of the snow and the trail out was clear enough, so home we would be, and maybe we'd rent some movies or eat some pizza, but enough with the scary, hairy monsters, Betty said. And we both agreed with her. Well, it was starting to get dark as we loaded the last of the things onto the car, and we started out of the drive when Bruce said, "Hey, stop a minute." And he got out of the car. Well, he cut the snow tube off of the roof and left it behind in the wood line and then got back in the car. He looked at Betty and said, "At least that one won't hurt them." They both giggled as we pulled out onto the road. I've had people ask me if I'd go back to that cabin, but I've never been able to find that listing again. And the email that I used that the contact made the arrangement through is now deleted. And the money has never actually left my account. I've tried to drive back many times, but I can never seem to find that exact road that that particular cabin is on. Thanks for listening. I'm Reverend Jeff, and may the Squatch be with you.